Welcome to the keynote. And just want to say a few words about my friend Joe Cassavaugh, who is your keynote speaker. Joe and I go back to like 2015 when I was an indie developer who hadn't done anything, and he was on Clutter 3. Now I've got one game out, and he is on Clutter 100. Something like that.
16.
Excuse me. Joe is a very accomplished guy in the indie world, as he will tell you. And,
brutal.
He is probably the most successful indie developer in Georgia, I would imagine. His franchise Clutter, which I'm sure he will. Well, now it's a genre apparently.
Yes. It is.
Dominates all the casual portals, is available on Steam, is available on phones, pretty much anywhere you
Switch,
want to play.
PlayStation now?
PlayStation, Switch, not the Xbox?
No, not the Xbox. I don't know why. I don't know why. I'll have to ask him.
And Joe has many accomplishments. He's shipped so many games, and to me, the mark of success for an indie developer is how much you ship. And Joe, as I said, has managed to ship 13 games in the time it's taken me to ship one. So that is quite an accomplishment, and he's got so many long-time followers of his games that buy every game the day it comes out on his website. He's a near fixture here at SimFest, and I'm told this is his last presentation.
Stop that!
I think, and he's the keynote speaker, so I think he wants to go out on top.
Sounds good.
So this should be quite a presentation, and I invite you all to take it in and learn something. So thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. I'm hoping this is a little different than my other talks. It's going to be a little less clutter-centric. There will be some clutter in here, but we're just going to go with it. As usual, I go at a very fast pace. I'm pretty sure there's going to be plenty of time at the end for questions. So that's what we're going to do. And I guess to explain, yes, Big Fish, I'm actually a genre now. They make a distinction between the old-style hidden object games, which were light adventure and hidden object, and they had a little bit of adventure component where you pick up a match to light this, to find the secret door, etc. To just pure hidden object games, and mine is considered. They don't call it a clutter. Clutter-like genre is what I think of it as, but Big Fish actually. 2 games ago, Clutter 14 was the game of the year in 2023 under the hidden object label that they gave it. So anyways, we're going to just move on from there. That was not planned part of the talk. The talk starts now. Okay, anybody know who this is?
$6 million man.
That is the $6 million. That's Lee Majors. Correct. He is the $6 million man. That's how old I am. This is from before most of you were born.
Autograph.
And they made him faster, better, we can improve it, so forth. And this is my 16th game, and that's the $6 million game. And this is the pitch I made to GDC this year that they turned down. They tell me constantly that my story doesn't apply to young indies because I'm in the casual space that they don't care about. However, I tried to make this case that it does. They gave me the feedback that that young indies would in fact like this story, but still said no. This is what Clutter 1 looked like. You can see it's kind of crude. And this is what Clutter 16 looks like. Much slicker, I think. You can just tell it's night and day between the two. So forth. But we'll get more into, actually we won't, that's another talk, we'll go for it. So here's the obligatory money slide that everybody accuses me of, because I believe you should share, that not enough, how can you make decisions with incomplete information? And knowing how easy or how hard it is to get a hit on Steam or how much money it could make depending on the genre, there's no information out there and everybody guesses and it sucks. And then GDC, since I'm ticked at them at the moment, they love to give you talks by people that their talk sums up to, I won the lottery, I got lucky, I'm the guy who created Wordle, oh, I created threes, oh, 2048, and they all got lucky. They put out these things that are pretty simple that blew up, and they got lucky. But I cared more about sustainability. So that 6 million, I'm not a millionaire, that 6 million is really only 2 million to me. That 6 million is in sales. And that 2 million is over 14 years and 16 games. And when you do the math, that's 125,000 per game, which is pretty good. And it's 143,000 per year on average. And there we go. And the last 3 years, I've been very close to the 200,000, and there's no reason the next 2 years won't be close to that. Okay? So I'm pretty happy. It's definitely better than if I worked for somebody else. But it's not, again, I'm not driving a Lamborghini or anything. Okay, what I'm more proud of is this is a map of just the people that have bought my games directly from me. It's about maybe 1,300 of my customers. And it's interesting that they are all over the map and so forth. And these are people that like my game so much that they found my website. So they're biased, but it's still nice to see that it comes from all over the world. But that's not what this talk is about. Because this got rejected by GDC, so I'm not doing that talk. Okay. So, and before we get started, I want to do a little preface. So, that's the Buddha. And if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. This is a famous book from the 70s that basically says, don't listen to anybody who tells you they know what's best for you. It's, develop critical thinking. If somebody tells you they know what's best for you, they're a cult leader, shoot them. That's the point of this book. What I do is I offer food for thought. I want you to critically think about everything I say and figure out how it applies to you. And the essence of intelligence is analogies, and I don't try to over-explain. So, again, this is food for thought. That's me not over-explaining. Okay, so the next version of this game, of this talk, was, and through the years, Andrew has changed the names of my talks and so forth, that I started having fun with that in talks. But for a while, this was going to be, hey, Dad, I want to create games for a living. And it was going to be me trying to explain how you should explain to your parents that as much as the industry sucks right now, you're making a smart choice. And this is a glass of water, which stands for optimism, pessimism, etc. Okay, and I believe in rational optimism. I believe it's the only sane choice, that everything else leads to despondency, despair, whatever. That even in the worst of times, you can look around and make a better choice. Okay, so then this developed into this. And for people who don't know, this is also a book, I don't know, Charles Dickens, one of the most famous authors, but I used him as a starting point. So Steam reaches new records. Oh, awesome time for the game. It was the best of times. Star Wars, canceled. 670 people lost their jobs. It was the worst of times. Game business is still growing, bigger than movie. It's just huge. It was the spring of hope. Mass layoffs at Blizzard. Couldn't resist this pun. It was the winter of despair. Pal World. Pokemon with guns. It was the age of wisdom. I don't know if that's a good move or not. And it was the age of foolishness, and that's Unity and their stupidity the last year or so. Just insane. And I use Unity. I love them, but man, was that stupid. There's the Tale of Two Cities, and this is one of my favorite books, and we'll get back to that one in a bit. But I wanted to start off with Tale of Two Cities, and my metaphor for this talk became storming the Bastille with Joe. And I had friends that said, too close to January 6th, but I'm like, no, they can tell the difference. And this is the French Revolution, and we're not going to get into politics at all. But the point of the talk was going to be how to survive and thrive in a chaotic industry. That was the next thing I sort of honed in on. This is one of the things I've used in my game, in my talks. time is the critical thing. How do you spend your time? And in prior talks, I gave a bunch of talks. That's water and optimism going on. That's pessimism and optimism and how truth and lies and the stories we tell ourselves and a bunch of stuff. But it all led up to 2 points. One point that I want to hammer in from a prior talk is everything you do is in preparation for a future path that you can't predict. Okay? And the semi-original thing, that's so important, I did it twice, that I came up with this idea of what I call the lottery ticket of time. Instead of just doing Netflix and chill, do something, read a book, learn a new skill, think about your future and how to get it better. And I've had prior talks where, again, that's the key thing of the talk, is do things today to up your odds for a better future. Now, I got lucky. Clutter was both a lottery ticket of time when I worked on it, and it actually paid off. And the thing is, you don't know which skill or which improvement you do that's going to make you ready to walk through that door or take that opportunity in the future. You don't know which ticket's going to pay off. But the more tickets you have, the better off you are. Okay? But again, that's not what this talk is about. So what is this talk about? It's the rational optimism part, and it's the heart of a solopreneur. And I want to tell you what it's like to be a solopreneur, and I'm going to try to convince you. Here we go. So rule number 1 is never bury the lead. And I learned something. Lead is spelled right. That's from newspapers. I always thought it was the other lead, but it means getting to the point immediately. And I'm only, 15 minutes, 20 minutes in, trying to get to the point. But the point of this talk is, I don't want to bury the lead. So Joe, how do you survive and thrive? You become a solopreneur, or at least you start to think like one. Okay, that's my advice, and we're going to talk about that for the rest. It's so important I put it up twice, and yes, that's what this talk is about. Finally. Okay, so solopreneur, number 1 I had to use for the lead, but this is really the number 1. I call it number 2, but the only bet worth making is betting on yourself. I can't stress this one enough when I thought to put this in. I bet on dog racing as a kid, as a young adult actually, in New Hampshire or whatever. And no matter what scheme I came up with, I thought I got better at it for a while, and I didn't. I will play poker against people because that's sort of still you, but no, it's much better. I don't even spend time doing poker or anything like that anymore. I would rather do the lottery ticket of time, which is coming up, and have faith in it. I'd rather spend time doing something that's going to better myself right now and up my odds for a better future. And right now, you're in the golden age. 20 years ago, it was so much harder to get started. But you can learn anything from the internet if you're smart and use some critical thinking. You've got better connectedness. I used to have to, give discs to people and say, play my game. You're connected. The tools are so much better. Unity, you cannot believe. Unity is like driving a Porsche and we were on skateboards. Okay? It's that different. And what you want to do is you want to start differentiating yourself. You want to smartly follow your passion. But you do want to stick what you're good at, which only you know, and you want to do it in a way that separates you out from the crowd. And that's why I like this guy. He was from one of my games where in my game he's singing I've Gotta Be Me, which I always liked. Anyways, but you've got to be so good they can't ignore you, even though they will. So rule number 4, really, and this is true of life, but game dev for sure, it's all risk versus reward. And what you need to do is mitigate the risk and make sure your reward is worth the risk. For Clutter 1, all I had to do was know I could survive for a year and make a game that I thought would make either more than 100,000 or less than 10, because I knew the market well enough that I knew it would get 100,000 eyeballs.
Can you say that again, Joe? Repeat all that again.
So for the first Clutter, I quit my job. I knew it was take about a man year, and I knew at the end of it, because I knew the market well enough, that I would either make over 100,000 or less than 10,000, and it was worth a year of my time to do that experiment and see, and all it was my time. I created a game that didn't cost me money. I didn't have to pay an artist. It's all photorealistic objects and so forth. And by the way, that's not the job switch part. That's the C one. The job switch part is a small story I want to share with you. I had a friend who used to, this was his core philosophy. He would say to people, I would not change a job for 5 to 10% raise. If I'm happy where I am, it's not worth it. I don't want the risk. But if it's if it could be life-changing, I'm a startup, a third guy in a startup, maybe get, startup money kind of, dreams, then he might consider it. But for 5 or 10% incremental, no. And he's right. You want to mitigate. So for me, the risk was only wasting 1 man year of my life, which, working for somebody at the time was about 100K. And by the way, Clutter 1 proved me wrong, came right in the middle, made about 50,000, a little more than that, and would have topped off at 60,000 if I didn't do anything else. But I figured I could do the sequel in half the time, so that was the next experiment that I ended up doing. So, but we're going to move on. Because, really, you want to keep asking yourself, is the experiment worth doing? That's, again, the risk reward. Ask yourself, if you fail at this, what will you learn? Well, again, I thought I'd make 100,000 or less than 10, but boom, it proved me I failed in a sense, but it came in right in the middle. It came in just enough to justify doing Clutter 2. And by the way, Clutter 1 has now made $250,000 for me, net to me. If I never did another game, it would have been 60,000. And yeah, so go on. So so I was super smart in math. Computers, for me were just amazing. But I was clueless in life. You guys are already ahead of me. I had no notion of what I wanted to do. I went to an engineering school because I didn't like that my teachers didn't really understand my math questions. And I wanted to be a teacher. I can't believe I wanted to be a teacher, okay? And I went to school for that. And luckily, I took Key Punch for my first computer course, aced the only one in college, and it was 3 days to find out you missed a semicolon, and I didn't want to do it. I aced it, I tutored people. I saw really, really smart people like chemies and physics that could not grok a computer language to save their lives, but they were really, really smart. But for me, it was like you turn on a light switch, the light comes on. It was that easy. So luckily, 2 years after I graduated, I helped somebody at a CRT for my first time ever. And instead of putting in Key Punch and waiting 3 days to find you missed a semicolon, you typed it in and you hit run. Oh, semicolon. Oh, boom. And it did. And it was a life-changing moment. My tongue fell out of my mouth and I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I worked and worked and worked for other people. And the genius idea came second. The first idea, I wanted to do my own games. I got sick of, I was working for when I did Mahjong Quest for them, made them way too much money back during a boom, and I kept pitching games, and they kept shooting them down, and it was really rough for me because I don't believe the game idea matters. It's the execution and all the things you learn while doing the game. So they half greenlit one, and then they pulled the plug, and when that happened, my wife said, "Can you do this on your own?" And I said, "Not this one, but something close. I can do something." And then I had the one genius idea. And this was my genius idea. Can anybody guess what the genius idea is?
Take the shot.
No, it's not. That's nice. I didn't even think of that.
Color in the ball.
No. This is a game. This isn't basketball. This is one little corner of basketball that somebody somewhere thought it's worth a whole game. And that's what I did with Clutter. The mechanic already existed of just taking this hog pile of objects, they call it a hog pile, and matching two. Hidden object games were I Spy based. You got names at the bottom. You're looking for a broom, you're looking for a ruler, you're looking for what. I wanted to go nonverbal, and I felt that one little piece was worth exploring. And that was my genius idea. And the rest is hard work. I was going to quote Thomas Edison, but he's kind of an a-hole. So, but this is the inspiration perspiration slide. And after 12 years. I've got recognized as my own, there's many, many offshoots of clutter-like games of people coming along. They don't quite get my sales numbers and stuff, but it's popular. And on the mobile phone, there's some very popular games that are definitely, if Clutter didn't exist, I can make a good argument that their game may or may not have ever existed. Okay, so I had numbers for a while. I don't know if you noticed. I had Solopreneur, rule number 1, number 2. And then I got rid of Solopreneur, and then I got rid of rule, actually, if you were paying attention. And now I'm just getting rid of all of it. And because this is sort of the main point I want to make before I move on to other things. Even though I'm a solopreneur, I root for everybody else. Life is not a zero-sum game, no matter what some politicians will tell you. You don't have to win at somebody else's expense. Their winning doesn't necessarily have to affect you. Okay? There's plenty of room to all be successful. And I just felt like saying. And rules are meant to be broken, which is why I threw out the rules, and I'm just going to wing it from here on in. And I'm a cartmanpreneur at heart, because I can do what I want. Okay, so I like to shove a lot of stuff into these talks, and I try not to do it as much, so we're going to go through this quickly, but this is some more practical advice that I just wanted to throw out there. Marketing first. You got to know where your eyeballs are coming before you write a line of code or draw a piece of art or whatever. If you don't know where you're going to sell that game, you're a hobbyist. And there's nothing wrong with being a hobbyist, but if you want to make a living from your game someday, you've got to think of your market first. And I was lucky. I did Mahjong Quest for the casual download PC market. I knew 100,000 people were going to see my game, and if I got a decent enough conversion rate, I would do okay. What I didn't know at the time is promotion made a lot of it because it upped the downloads and other things, and it took me a few years to finally get the producer types and the marketing types to realize how much I was making them with my game, especially with the bump in the sales to the prior games and stuff in the franchise. I was really one of the first, that really hit the franchise effect hard, I think, in my space. There were people who were doing sequels, but not as much as sort of I was doing them. Okay, you can't feel guilty over self-promotion. This is also from my game. My stories in my game have become more meta over time, and I've actually told the story of my life in different ways of how I became the Clutter guy. And this is actually, all these shots are from my high school yearbook, except for this one, which was my father reluctantly letting me shave my head, or not shave it, but go from this mop to that to play basketball. And my reason, believe it or not, was so that I looked tougher on defense, which I didn't look tougher on defense. So, but you really, if you're not for yourself, who will be for you? Now, if you're only for yourself, you're an a-hole. And this last little part is the old, and if not now, when? Start today. Okay. Good enough is good enough. That's one of my mantras. Okay? What's that? What's that represent?
Blocking the Suez Canal.
What?
Blocking the Suez Canal.
No, come on. What's that represent? 2 words. What?
I was about to say taking on a lot of tasks.
Ship it. Get the game out the door. Stop polishing it. Don't do a Kickstarter for a game that's done. Finish the game first. Ship it. Learn. Get it out to customers. Get feedback. Make the next one better. Okay. Refactor yourself. Everything you do, you can probably find a better way to do it. Okay? When you get in the game business and you're going to try to put out 15, 16 games, you start looking at everything you do, and if you can save, 5 minutes, you want to do it. Because you're not going to do that one thing once. You're going to do it, as soon as you realize you're going to do that thing 100 times, that 5 minutes becomes, 4.5 hours. And that's part of this refactor yourself, that's a Japanese word that means constant self-improvement. Okay, just an iteration. And you can look at anything you do, and I'm not going to give you, I have 3 talks that talk about different things I've done for even at an engineering level or a personal level or whatever to get better and waste less time. So the last thing is an overlooked one. It's one of my favorites. If you can if you can impose your own constraints on you, and I'll give you an example. I've written 2 chapters in a book, okay? Way back, had other things to do, but I wrote 2. And I wrote them 2 because I was committed to this guy who had a website who put them up there. But the first thing I did, I knew I wanted to do a horror story. And I was trying to plot and try to do it. But the first thing I did, it's called My Mentor Myself. And mentor, M-E-N-T-O-R. And I got the idea that every chapter was going to end in M-E-N-T. So entertainment, employment, whatever. And really, I looked up those words, and then I got 15, and I picked them. Man, that saved tons of time. I was at least, I got some scaffolding, I got something to work for. And that's what I do with my games. I already have the scaffolding done, and occasionally I get an idea, and I go, let's talk about a game about all the games I love in my life. And the first thing I did, I went, I start with card, then some board games, then some video games, and I made the list, and now I've got 10 chapters, away I go. As opposed to just starting to write, right? And this, again, you can think about how this might apply to your own life, but it's so freeing when you do this. Because, again, time is your big enemy. Time, when you're trying to get the 16 games or wherever, when you can save it. And these constraints matter. And even that good enough is good enough. One of my partners used to say, a difference that's no difference is no difference at all. A lot of time developers polish something that the user's never going to notice, and they don't care. And if you have 2,000 of these little choices, you can say no to 1,500 of them, and you'll be fine. Or you can do the 1,500 and ship 3 months later. Okay? And I don't recommend that. What you want to do, whether you're working on your game or not, is you want to perfect your craft. Okay? Again, with everything I'm talking about. And if you don't have a game ready and you don't have infinite money coming in, you haven't won the lottery, find somebody else to pay you to perfect your craft. This is the answer to the question somebody had from the last speaker. This is what you do. You find, if you're an artist, you go work for somebody. If you're an IT guy, you can get better at your job so that when you do take the plunge, you're quicker. Because again, time matters. Okay, so does anybody figure this one out? This is look for really big, not look for your leads, other people have guessed that. Look for really big opportunities. This guy's not just jumping from one little fish, to another. He's looking for that big opportunity that makes it worth it. And you want to always be looking, or you'll miss it. Okay. So this is my Ikigai screen, but the reason I have it up here is once I realized I really had a digital IP that was also a franchise, it changed my life in a bunch of different ways, because once you have a certain amount of money coming in that you don't know what it's going to be, that affects things. And you're your own boss at this point. I don't have to work for somebody. But the reason I put it up here is to point out that the number one benefit of being a solopreneur, once you're reaching this point, is you can't be laid off. I can't be laid off. I can only give up and go to work for someone else. Are we all set on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a washed up.
That's fine. So one more thing. And actually, I'm going to go back because I got distracted. I can't be fired. And, it really sucked when I tried to we tried to buy a condo for a rental opportunity. And the bank, regular banks balked at loaning me money because they didn't believe I was making, enough money consistently. They wanted me to have a boss. And I was like, what? Then I'd be in constant fear of being fired. Not a safer bet. And once you get a certain level, again, this is really good. But the nice thing is, even if you try early and give up and go back and work for somebody, that's fine. I did that actually early on. I had a failed experiment that in another talk I talked about. Okay, so one more thing. Here's the food for thought again. Stop. I always have one more goddamn thing to say. Okay? People that know me know that's true. And really, I have at least three videos from prior talks that have much more information than here, some quite a bit practical, and more of the Clutter story. I highly recommend them. The ones beyond the 3, there's maybe 15 more. I wouldn't recommend them to anybody, but the top 3, give them a shot. Okay, so this is my no slide slide. This is where I usually put the kitchen sink in, and I want to make sure I set everything, and sometimes I just list a bunch of things. But the important thing is, what's that mean again?
Ship it.
Right. Here's another nice thing about doing a franchise, and it's also a nice thing to know, I am going to do another talk sometime. Okay? Ship it, because everything left over can go in the next game. And that's what I do. That's one of the reasons I'm fast. I might think of 10 things and only 7 of them make it into this game. And as they get harder or trickier or something, boom, 3 get bumped. There's always be a next game. Glass of water again. Rational optimism, the heart of a solopreneur. It's all meaningless. Sucks to be in game dev right now. It's all opportunity. Best time ever to be in game dev. Well, that's partly the Tale of Two Cities. The Moonshadow is one of my favorite books. It is the very first hand-painted graphic novel. It's gorgeous. It's about a kid whose father is a ball of light, a bunch of other ball of lights that are aliens, that picks up his mother from the 60s, who's like a love flower child, and that's his parents, and he goes through a bunch of adventures. And at the end, and there's 2 books within this book. One's called We're All Ants in a Meaningless Cosmos, and the other one is the philosophy of Sri Lanka that has all the answers. And it ends with this balancing act. He tells you he's going to tell you what he learned, but he can't do it. He does it in pictures. And what I took from it is life is this undecidable thing. It's about, between 2 extremes. And you really have to pick your own path through them. Going to one extreme or the other is probably not the answer, but you're going to fall off the beam at times. And in the book, he falls off, lands on his butt, and laughs. And that's what I took his advice is, that's what you need to do. You better have a freaking sense of humor, because you're going to fail as much as you succeed. Okay, so it's all meaningless. Sucks to be in game dev right now. Optimism plus solopreneur puts the fate in your hands instead of that uncertain world out there. And then you can decide whether you have to go back to the uncertain world or you just work harder in yours or whatever. And I'm going to leave you with a bastardization, I guess, of a Robert Frost poem that's mostly misinterpreted. You should look it up sometime, called it's not the road not traveled, it's actually the road less taken. But I'm going to end with this little couplet that I wrote. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, and being a solopreneur has made all the difference. And thank you. And I highly recommend the point of the talk. Think about being a solopreneur yourself. And you can, even if you're an artist, you can learn new tools. You can, if you're a narrator and you don't need a program, there's a thing called Twine. You can write a whole game if you're into story narration. That's pick your own adventure if you want to do that. Everything's out there.
All right, questions. We got the mic set up over there. I'll pass on the first one from chat. Let's see. Sure I can remember it well.
Okay. And what time is it? How they
We got
doing?
15 minutes.
Oh,
till
good.
lunch.
Good.
So Timothy Johnson from chat.
No, don't. I don't want to even hear it.
He says he's made more money off of bad code than perfect code.
Very good. Thanks. Tell him I love that.
All right, Timothy loves that, just so you know.
Yeah.
You can always blame Tim for
Yeah.
that. All right, so I'll ask the official first question from here. What's next for Puzzles by Joe then?
Well, so 2 games ago I stopped doing story because it was too slow. And I turned it into Clutter Puzzle Magazine. And I showed you Clutter Puzzle Magazine, volume 16, number 2. There was one before that, volume 15, number 1. And 14 was my last of the more standard games that had a meta story. Basically, the last 3 were self-help like this, were so forth. Now, I still chat to my players because there's enough players that actually like that. They like thinking I'm playing the game next to them, and over time the stories have just gotten weirder and played to that because I like, satisfying my players. I am sometime this year. There will be it might be called Clutter Blitz. I like to change names, but it's going to be a phone version of Clutter. That's not the full game. I have four of my Clutters have made it to the phone, but as is. They were just the PC version ported to varying degrees of success. And I have a company that will help me get it to market. And I'm going to, 16 is wrapping right now. I immediately clone 16 into 17. And I will then take that and gut it and make another project that's going to be my mobile project. And it's going to play, instead of this way, it's going to play this way. And it's going to be geared totally to the hyper-casual market. It will not be photorealistic objects. It will be much faster than Clutter is based. And we're going to see if that's an experiment worth doing, basically.
All right, if you have questions, you can put them here, any questions on getting into the industry, how he actually sells these games, where people buy them, and so forth. But I'll ask you one more question, Joe.
Sure.
You make a big point of your games being casual, but by any real standards of how much time your players spend with their games, how much money they spend on their games, what part of their entertainment life it is, your players are hardcore. They spend a lot of time, money.
Correct.
What's casual about your games? Anyone else? Go ahead and line up.
The only thing that's casual is it fits the 3-ball match, mahjong, card game, solitaire. It fits, our target audience is women over 40 with some disposable income. It's not the Steam RPG first for FPS people. So that's why the market is casual. The game, I have players that have played since Clutter 1, and they play my game. They play my game like I play Freestyle, which means they play it over an hour a day, every day, and they play one of the versions. And as soon as 7 days ago, or whatever it was, I sent out my newsletter blast, which is like 2,000 people, nothing big. But I had 100 sales in one day at the $20 mark. And from my own side, I make $20. When it goes through one of the portals, I get like $6 a game. So.
All right, good.
So I see primarily your market is on your website, Puzzles by Joe.
No.
No?
No, the market, go to Big Fish, go to Game House, go to, so Big Fish, Game House, I Win, Game Fools, Wild Tangent, and like if you go to Game Fools or Game House, you'll see me on the front page.
So I guess my question still stands.
Okay.
Like, how do you feel about Steam as a way?
I make nothing. I make virtually nothing on Steam because the audience can't find me on Steam. I get a lot of backhanded compliments from the people that do play my games on Steam. They'll say weirdly addicting. It blows their mind that I'm a developer that actually talks about myself in the game, and almost all positive reviews. But it's only a handful, and I only make maybe, if I make 2,000 a game over on Steam, that'd be a lot. So.
Thank you.
Yep. Michael.
How's it going? I'm the second half of a small game studio. We got Alex Kingsley.
Okay.
The other half.
Right.
And just, I guess I might sort of speak on our behalf. Like, I feel like you were talking directly to us.
Fire Alex, you're a solopreneur.
Right. You can be a solopreneur with two people. You can.
Duopreneur?
Yeah. What's tough is, I will say this, and then I'll let you get to your question. So, because I forgot to address, this is one of the few points I did forget to address. So, let's say you are a guy and you decide you need an artist, and you need to do piecemeal work, or you really like collaboration, okay? If you're going to do a collaboration, you better make the dividing lines right, and you better have, for all situation, who has the final say if push comes to shove. So, like if you're a coder and he's an artist, then yeah, he can have final say on the art. But like when it comes time to ship, it can't be you both have to agree to ship. That's my first partner did that. I was in hell because he refused to ship for about 6 months. And he did only 20% of like little graphic routines for me. I wanted the game done and move on, so.
Yeah, that,
Yeah.
we do have the, like a unanimous sort of decision thing. So like we both, like the studio comes to a screeching halt unless we come to a decision. So we can't do anything, without, making sure that we, make peace and have that decision be unanimous.
Good luck.
So yeah, I mean we've got some interesting decisions coming up this year.
Yep.
So I guess one of the things, I mean, I feel like I could talk your ear off about.
I'll be around. And I'll be around, yeah.
So I guess one of the things that I do want to bring up as far as like publishing goes, because
Yeah.
that's something that we wanted to know as far as like an indie game developer. Like there's a lot of different aspects to publishing. So like you got self-publishing, and then
Yeah.
you can also make deals, publishing
Yeah,
deals.
I picked my distributors because I didn't have to worry about that, and I'm very little help there. I'm not a great marketer. I knew my games would go on Big Fish and iWin for starters, okay? And because they took anybody's game. And in fact, I was annoyed. Big Fish used to put out a game of a day and sometimes a secondary game, and I was the secondary game. But at least still people saw it. But I kicked butt of the primary game that day. But I had a game, that first game, that producer and marketing types just looked at it and went, ugly. And it took me a while to finally get some respect from them. But I also knew at least that first game would get 100,000 eyeballs, and I had a 5% conversion rate, which was pretty good. Now, I lasted long enough that I now do have a relationship with them, and now I do collector's edition, which is twice the price that they asked me to do. When I asked them 2 years earlier, they said no. 2 years go by, they asked me to do it. Okay, and that's part of the be so good they can't ignore you. Gamehouse wouldn't take my first game. I was annoyed with them in an email, apologized later at a GDC, and they finally took my second game and my third game, still refused my first game, and then they kind of switched over, and finally, after I think game 5, they finally put the first one on, and now, if you go to Gamehouse, there's the Clutter series. That's on their front page always. And this is somebody that wouldn't take my first, couple games. Steam's a crapshoot. I don't know how you do marketing. There's a guy, Mike Brown, and Mike Brown.
Oh, Michael Brown.
Yeah, he's been here before. Vicarious. It's tough. I have a publisher guy who's had some successes in indie publishing some of his games on Steam, but even his latest, it's not doing as well. It's very hard for my type of games on Steam at all, so I don't care. And luckily, I'm sorry, I was just saying, that's the one place I won the lot. I don't have to care about marketing, so I'm not the guy to go to for marketing questions.
Yeah, I think that that's one of the things was, as far as what we're seeing going forward, we might have to partner with a bigger publisher for funding or something like that.
Yeah, and you might get lucky. That mobile game I did is we're going to do a prototype, and I'm hoping the publisher will give me money to fund so I can pay the guy who's going to do that so I don't slow down doing Clutter 17 and 18. So it's always an open door once you're known. I don't know how you get, way back in the day, it was pretty easy, maybe about how you get somebody from Sony or Xbox to talk to you and fund. You usually have to show them something, and then,
I guess I'll sort of what I'm getting at maybe is artistic integrity, as far as not trying to change your concept too much to meet a specific
yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. I constantly put stuff in my game that goes against others in artistic integrity because if I ever get an idea, this is how bad I am. If I ever get an idea that I can hear my old boss or my old producer going, "You can't do that," it's going in the game, and it's because it doesn't matter because it's the good enough is good enough. You really. So I'm gonna two small things. There's one is I hate the producers, what I call the blue enough problem. You've got your game, it's perfect. The artistic director comes, oh, make that a little bluer, please. And they feel like they saved your game. They are now going to go brag about how your game is so good because of their touches. And you just want to go, because it doesn't matter. Most decisions don't matter. And I'm not going to do the second one, which is kind of an off-color joke, and
Joe,
I'm just
thanks,
not going to.
appreciate
So,
So, real quick, I'll make 3 comments on that, and then we'll hand it off to our last question. First of all, you talked about decision-making in a group. At my company, Holistic Design Incorporated, we were originally several dudes, Holistic Gaming, so every project had a head dude who would make all the final decisions. The reason I bring this up is for student projects. I've seen it so important to have that one vision holder in the group who will make these final decisions. This fits the vision or it doesn't. Don't sit there trying to get a majority vote, or one vote will take you this way, one
Right.
vote will take you that way, and the next one will be a tie, and you'll stop all together, and everyone will hate each other. Just have one decision maker, everyone gives input, make sure you trust that decision maker, and let them, and just keep going forward. Don't stop to wrangle out what color blue you
Right.
want to do.
right.
On the marketing side, the name that Mike threw out is Chris Zukowski. He was actually a SimFest keynote during our pandemic years. So look for his Steam presentations, the Game Dev Success Ladder, and
How to market a game.
how to market a game on Steam. Great information. Check them out on our YouTube channel. And regarding publishers, I'm sorry that Michael Brown couldn't be here today. He was supposed to be here at Camp South last moment. But we did a publisher event at DreamHack last year, and we are tentatively working on a bigger publisher event for 2024 at DreamHack. So that'll be in October this year. So keep that in mind. And yes, you all are hearing it on the stream. We are looking to do Siege at DreamHack again this year, October 4th to 6th. And our final question.
Joe, I love your energy and optimism, and the anecdotes that you give are just so invaluable. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on pushing past rejection, because in your last
Oh, never,
anecdote,
yeah, never hear no. Never, so that's tough to say in a Me Too world, right? There's a fine line between being enthusiastic and stalking. And I will tell you one story. So I was at GDC. This is one of the GDC miracles. And as much as I hate GDC on some things, GDC walking by a booth one time made me $32,000, believe it or not. Just insane. That wouldn't have happened if I wasn't at GDC that year. And I'll tell you that story at lunch. But this one is I'm walking by with a friend I used to work with, and he sees somebody he knows that's sitting down having lunch, and he goes, oh, Joe, wait up a second. I need to say hi to this guy. So I start talking to the other guy. And he mentions that he used to work for Wild Tangent. And I said, oh, Wild Tangent. I said, I received a very funny email from them. I was pushing them to take my games, and they wouldn't, and I kept writing them. I was like the guy in Shawshank. And I finally received a letter from one of the guys, the VP, who said, Joe, although we admire your tenacity, you're this close to us never wanting to hear from you again. And I said, that's interesting. And the guy looks up and goes, that was me. And he tells me a story, the flip side. He goes, I wrote a letter afterwards saying, backing up a little bit and just saying, hey, my games are good, and stating the numbers again. So he calls his people in and he says, so tell me more about this Joe guy that's right, so forth. He says, well, he says, yeah, he writes a letter every week, so forth. And he says, well, are his games? And he goes, well, they're okay. Well, but how is his numbers? Oh, his numbers are real good. And they're like, and the BP, like, well, then why isn't he on the site? But they were gatekeepers that were like, oh, my games aren't pretty enough for Wild Tangent. And the market has shifted. 10 years ago, that's what you had. You had gatekeepers going, oh, we can't let that crappy little game on our site. Steam, by the way, historically, I don't know if you know this story, Steam switched to their greenlight process or whatever because they realized they couldn't predict winners anymore. There was a game called it wasn't McStuffin because that's the stupid dog, but it was MacGyver or whatever. It was something Guyver. And it was a parody on MacGyver. I think it was McGyver is what it was instead of MacGyver. And it was a thing where these pixel animated things, you had to set off a bomb. You had to stop a bomb in 30 seconds. And while you're trying to do that, one of the animated things would come over and kick you in the, over and over again. And 2 guys out of these 13 that are sitting around week after week are going, we gotta put this game up on Steam, And everybody else was going, no, this game sucks. No way, no way, no way. And after about 6 weeks, 8 weeks, they finally gave in to these two guys. They put it up there, and it was like a huge game for it. And Steam went, boy, do we suck at curation. And they said, we need to change this. We can't be curators anymore. And they were one of the first to make the shift. Now I notice it in a lot more, places that have made that shift. So I hired two girls to do, two young people that did the art for my only game that had a true cutscene story thing. And it was beautiful art, stylistic but beautiful. The producers loved it, the marketing people loved it, and it didn't sell as well. My own customers felt it wasn't Jonas enough, and so forth. And it led me to, we were already working on the second game, but because I paid them $12 grand to make less money, I went, nope, we're done. And I cut them loose, and I made the next game where I just upped the Jonas, like to 10 degrees. And it did better. And I went, I'm done with, I'm pleasing my customers. I'm done pleasing them. But I believe just doing that stupid failed experiment is possibly what got the marketing people to pay attention to my game, even though I then went back off the deep end to stuff they didn't like. They started looking at the numbers, and, it's really weird. But that game still disappoints me because it was a great little game, and it's some of my players' favorites, but most of them just rejected it because it did not look like the other Clutter games. So.
All right, thank you, Joe. All right, we're gonna break for lunch.
Thanks for having me.